With the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams next season, teams that start out rocky can have an opportunity to still prove themselves and be one of the best teams in the nation. In this video, we will be breaking down why Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks will be a national championship contending squad this next college football season. But before we get into why Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks will be a national championship contending squad next college football season, subscribe for more Oregon Ducks content. Although Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks will be without 3 star leaders on the offensive side in QB Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, their star wide receiver, and running back Bucky Irving, who is their star running back on the offensive side, they have gone to work in the transfer portal to recruit some amazing players to address those issues. On the defensive side, the Oregon Ducks will be out some also big leaders as well on the defensive side, in Kyrie Jackson, and a guy who's expected to declare for this year's NFL draft, and Brandon Dorless. But once again, like I said, with the offensive side, they've gone to the work in the transfer portal to fill those gaps, going into next season to revamp and improve their team as a whole. The first reason why the Oregon Ducks will be a national contending team next season will be the transfer portal. You know, if you look at the transfer portal so far, they've amassed and they've recruited and gotten so many big commitments, you know, from the transfer portal, and they've probably had one of the best prospect-wise classes in the transfer portal this season. And the first guy, you know, obviously replacing Bo Nix for the starting quarterback position at Oregon, being Dillon Gabriel, transferring over from Oklahoma, at 69.3 completion percentage, 3,660 passing yards, and 30 passing touchdowns, along with 6 interceptions, and had the 4th highest QBR in college football last season at 87. Like I said, this transfer is going to be huge for Oregon because, you know, like I mentioned earlier, Bo Nix is now gone. You know, Ty Thompson, also, who would have been probably the starting quarterback if they hadn't gotten a guy in the transfer portal, transferred to Tulane. So now Oregon needs that QB number 1, and they should have gotten a really good one right now. And, you know, Dillon Gabriel, you know, he's got that experience. He's played at a really good level. He played at a Power 5 level already. And, you know, I feel like that would be huge going to the Big Ten or whatever they might change the name to next season. The next big transfer, which is another quarterback, which was kind of surprising when I saw it, but Dante Moore, you know, he transferred from UCLA, the freshman, the true freshman last year. Stat-wise, he had 53.5% completion percentage last season at UCLA, 1,610 passing yards, 11 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. And even though Dante Moore probably won't be the starting guy next season, he definitely will be a guy that'll push Dillon Gabriel in practice in that QB battle for the starting job, and will be a guy that, you know, if Dillon Gabriel somehow goes down during the season, that it would be a solid backup with Oregon. And then the next big guy that will be a big transfer on the offensive side is Jay Harris. You know, he's a running back, and this guy, like, he's not well known. He's not well known, but I've watched this guy, and he looks pretty decent. You know, he transferred from Northwest Missouri State, which I believe is a D2, and his stats last season at Northwest Missouri State, Jay Harris had 244 rushing attempts for 1,433 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. And, you know, even though, like I said, he's not a well-known dude and, like, he's coming from a D2, I feel like for sure, like, just watching some of his highlights, that he could be a guy that could help out in the run game with Jordan James, now that Bucky Irving is now gone to the NFL probably. You got probably one of the most exciting parts of this transfer portal class for Oregon in Evan Stewart. You know, last night or whenever you're watching this, you know, it's last night for me that he committed to Oregon, and that he's going to transfer to Oregon. But, you know, transfer from Texas A&M last season at Texas A&M, Evan Stewart had 38 receptions for 514 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. And, you know, this transfer for Oregon is, like I said, one of the biggest because you already look at Oregon, and they're already coming back with a really solid recruiting class. You got Tess Johnson coming back for another year, which is huge. He hit well over the 1K receiving yard mark last year. And then you got Trayshawn Holden, who had 450 receiving yards last season. And, you know, he was that wide receiver 3 last year for Oregon. You know, he was previous at Alabama, so he's a decently, you know, experienced wide receiver. Then you got the freshman Dreon Dickey, who, you know, he might not start, but he's going to be a guy that will turn heads, and when he gets the opportunities that he will have on the field, he'll make plays, you know, in those opportunities that he gets. He didn't play last year because of a bad injury. It's sad that happened, but he's a guy that definitely could be big. And, you know, just adding that guy in Evan Stewart could make this offense, I think, in my opinion, probably one of the best offenses in college football next season. Even though Oregon only got 2 defensive transfers, I'm going to touch on them real quick. You know, with Kyrie Jackson leaving, which is big, and Brandon Dorless leaving, these 2 guys will definitely help on the defensive end, you know, replacing those 2 guys. You know, you got Cam Alexander, DB, transfer over from UTSA, had 32 solo tackles last season, 2 interceptions, and 15 pass deflections, which is really solid. Then you got Kobe Savage, he's a safety. He transferred over from Kansas State, had 38 solo tackles and 3 interceptions, which is also really solid. And both of those guys will definitely add to the defense of Oregon next season. The last big reason I feel like that Oregon could be a natty contending team next season, or a squad next year, is they have a lot of guys returning next year. They don't have a lot of guys leaving really that are big, impact players. The thing, like I said about Oregon, is they have a lot of defensive experience, but also have a lot of young talent as well. You got Mateo Uiagalelei, or I probably butchered that, but who's a freshman. He recorded 2 sacks this season. And Tululi, I probably butchered that too, I'm sorry, but he's also a freshman at 19 solo tackles and 2 sacks as well. And, even though Oregon's defense may not be an elite defense next year, like I was saying, like with all the guys that they're going to have back and not losing many guys, and, the transfers over that they have already and the guys that they could add as well, and just the young talent that'll come in and probably mature and do well next season as well, they could definitely be a team that could be pretty solid defensively. And just with that elite offense that they're going to have next season, I feel like they're going to be a sleeper team to be a natty contender next year. And that is why I believe that Oregon will be a natty contender next season. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload.